This is One-on-One. Scott McVay is a grantmaker, cetologist, and poet, and a very good friend of ours. Scott, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Steve.
Now, Scott, clarify, a cetologist is?
A whale scientist.
That's right, and you're so many other things as well. You know, I should tell you that while we'll talk about your poetry, you are featured in this wonderful book called A Passion for Giving, written by our good friend Angelica Berry and Peter Klein, and you see the book over there. And I was talking to Angelica about the book, and we're talking all about philanthropy. Before we get into whales and poetry, philanthropy is what to you? And in fact, you did in fact write a 5-line poem in your book called Whales Sing and Other Exuberances about philanthropy. Did you not?
Yes.
How do you describe it?
Well, very briefly, I believe if you happen to have the charge of giving away money strategically and creatively, that it's a sacred trust, that these are really precious dollars that should be allocated in a way that really makes a difference. And it requires a lot of study, a lot of review to find out the sectors you want to be involved in, and then the specific organizations out of, say, 1.5 or 1.6 million in this country. But I have a 5-line, I have a five-liner here. A new idea typically does not, at the beginning, fit the guidelines. Yet that's where the strategic possibilities lie.
How true. How true. And I should say that what's so interesting is one of Scott's many areas of expertise. When we talk about philanthropy, he used to head up the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, and many years ago the Caucus Educational Corporation was fortunate enough to get a grant from the Dodge Foundation. And Scott's tough. I will tell you, he asks all the tough questions, and he's trained many others, coached many others, mentored many others to ask those tough strategic questions. And we are better for it, and other nonprofits are better for it. A lot of misconceptions about philanthropy, is there not?
Well, I think one of the problems sometimes is people that get into foundation work begin to think it's their money, and that people seem to be responding a little too quickly to their wit, and that also over time the hat size just keeps growing of people in this line of work. And actually, in my case, I was so lucky to work with so many people who were truly amazing to me in education, in the arts, in critical issues, and in the well-being of animals, that I was always looking up to these people, and I prepared very hard for every site visit, and I always learned a lot. And you learn a lot by being in the institution, not having somebody pitch to you at your desk or going to lunch with them and so on.
Your fascination with poetry, you know, in fact, I happen to know, and some others may know as well, that some of your philanthropic support of poetry has been so important. Bill Moyers benefited, not Bill directly, but work that Bill has been involved in, the arts, poetry. Your fascination with poetry, where does it come from?
Well, I was an English major.
So you admit that?
Yes. Yeah.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Princeton University, and
oh, that little school?
Well, I think the most important institution in New Jersey is probably Rutgers, but
we agree.
In a larger frame, probably Princeton is. And I was lucky enough to read Moby Dick under the lead scholar up to that time, and maybe even today, Larry Thompson, who was the biographer of Robert Frost. And he said, don't skip the whale stuff. So actually, I have spent a lot of my life studying whales, and I actually, the 6-octave song of the humpback whale, I actually, after months of spectrographic analysis, figured it out. And it turned out that every male humpback whale, this is the guy with the big long flippers, Megoptera novae, that at any given time, whether you're in Bermuda or Puerto Rico or over in Hawaii or in the Indian Ocean, that at any given time, all the males are singing the same song, and it's a 6-octave song that has 6 separate components to it. In fact, I co-authored a paper in Science on this, describing in great depth and detail. In the meantime, there have been 300 other papers written on the song of the humpback whale. And actually, at the time of the discovery, which was in 1968, I wrote a poem, which is the title poem of this new collection of Whales Sing and Other Exuberances.
Whales Sing and Other Exuberances. Put out by?
The Lime Tree Press. And this poetry in the book, there's 50, it covers a 50-year span of my life, from age 29 to 79, and it's in 9 different sections, 99 poems. My wife's a mathematician, and she believes 9 is a royal or sacred number, and she can do quite a disquisition on that. But in the 9 sections, the first section is on whales, the second section is on Nepal. We were in Nepal in 1985 trying to save the last pristine valley there, and that led to a series of poems. And it goes all the way to the last section, which has to do with getting older, and a mild preoccupation with that, but not heavy.
Scott, obviously, you know, Angelica's written in the book and talked a lot about your work. Your thoughts about her contribution to the field of philanthropy?
Well, I am very impressed by her willingness, number one, to listen, which is the starting point, and number two, to use considerable imagination to try to map the territory of what the possibilities are. So that I had first met with the board of the Russell Berry Foundation for 2 hours to try to talk about some of the opportunities in New Jersey beyond Bergen County. And it was a terrific meeting. And I've continued with her to talk about these things, but she always puts herself in the position of an inquiring individual, not someone who comes in thinking they know it all, which is always the fatal mistake in philanthropy. You've got to go in as a learning experience and begin to find out what really matters. And that's what she's done.
Much of philanthropy that I've learned through Angelica's book and just doing this work and meeting people like you, a lot of it's about connecting the dots and being a good listener and asking the right questions. And Scott, I want to thank you for joining us. And I know we've just touched on your work and the 79 years that you've been around, and just keep doing what you're doing. We keep learning. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Steve.
We appreciate it.
You bet.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Johnson & Johnson, Health First New Jersey, TD Bank, the Russell Berry Foundation, and by Community Education Centers. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and northjersey.com. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System.